For the last 20 years, the unemployment rate for young Aboriginal men in remote Northern Territory communities has hovered at around 60%. Local economies are so small they can't provide enough jobs. In Daly River, 200 kilometres south of Darwin, half the population is under 25, and according to the latest census, most men in their teens and early 20s don't have a job and are not looking for one. Centrelink benefits are the only source of income for many, but as Kate Wild reports, hundreds of young Aboriginal men aren't taking up the payments.
Dion Mungan's closest Centrelink office is about 200 kilometres away. He can call them, but getting through to speak to someone can take hours. And the cultural gap is even bigger.
Have you had times when you weren't on Centrelink, when you just made a decision not to be on it?
Sometimes I did. For me, I think it was just a waste of time.
The conditions attached to welfare payments are confusing for a lot of people in remote communities.
Why do people think it's a waste of time to be on Centrelink?
And then if you don't be on time for your appointment or be there at the exact date that you were given, then they'll cut you off.
Yeah. Here, Junior.
Nikita Jason's husband works in the mines on a fly-in, fly-out basis when there are jobs. He's not working at the moment, and he isn't on the dole either.
He just doesn't see the point in getting on the dole because it's just a big stuff around to him. He would rather work for a large pay than a measly 200 a fortnight or something like that.
Other young men who spoke to Lateline said they resented some of the things they had to do to qualify for payments. In particular, training for jobs they say don't exist in remote communities. Nikita Jason says there are young men in Daly River who experience real barriers to signing up for the dole.
Sometimes there's female Centrelink workers and they don't feel comfortable talking to them. They don't really know how to fill out the forms. I think that's because of their literacy being so low from not going to school.
Until recently, there have been no firm figures on the number of Aboriginal men living without an income in the Northern Territory. Census figures were recently analysed for Lateline to produce the first hard data.
When you look at the census data, about 11% of the Indigenous population aged 15 to 24, males, in remote Northern Territory are not working, not studying and receiving no income.
Where did you live 5 years ago?
And only about 1% of the non-Indigenous population in the same area, same age group, are not receiving any income, not working, not studying.
On these figures, around 600 young Aboriginal men in the Northern Territory are choosing not to take up Centrelink money they're entitled to. And Dr Biddle says this probably underestimates the true figure. The social consequences are serious.
I think from talking to women, one of the things they say to me, a lot of the fights and the family violence at home is about the lack of money. So we've moved.
Olga Havnen is a former Territory bureaucrat whose job was to monitor the delivery of government services in remote communities. She's been drawing the government's attention to the plight of these young men for years.
Absolutely. I've raised it with officers at DUA, I've raised it with other federal government counterparts, I've raised it at a ministerial level. Somehow people are not prepared to pay any attention to it. They don't seem to understand the consequences and the impacts of men being so disengaged.
She's called on government to discover why Aboriginal men are not taking up income available to them through Centrelink.
So the level of poverty is certainly much more severe. But the other thing that I'm hearing anecdotally is that the levels of family violence and family conflict has a lot to do with the lack of money.
When they're not on Centrelink, and then they go ask their parents or aunties or uncles or dads or whatever, asking for a bit of money, so yeah, it is a bit stressful for them.
They tend to smash things, beat up their family members. It's really sad.
Dion Mungan wants to work and has signed back on to Centrelink, though many of his friends won't. He and Nikita Jason say there are ways to make the system easier for remote Aboriginal men.
I'm on Centrelink at the moment. That's going pretty easy now, because they've got the online human service where you could just lodge your own form and do your reports. Yeah, I think it's heaps better to get an online human service than to be able to get on the phone and wait for hours.
I think if there was more males coming in as Centrelink workers than females. Maybe having separate places for males to go so they don't feel embarrassed.
Olga Havnen doubts these young people will be listened to any more than she has been.
That's the stunning bit for me, because as I say, if you had a rate of 60% of disengagement by men in any other suburb or community in Australia, the country would be seriously worried.
Kate Wild, Lateline.